Israeli Lin Helena Halfon was charged with fraud against her husband, Richard Rappaport. The fraud allegations say she tried to steal $1 million from him during their brief marriage. Both Rappaport and Halfon refused to provide any information about their marriage, such as how they met. What little we know about their relationship has come from records and interviews. It's believed that Halfon met Rappaport at a benefit or social event in Tampa Bay, Florida. Why? They were first photographed together in February 2019 at a benefit for the Holocaust Museum in the Vinoy Renaissance Hotel in St. Petersburg, Florida. However, we don't know what led both of them to the event. However, investigators do know who Rappaport is and why a good-looking younger woman might want to attend benefits with him. Rappaport is the founder and owner of Panther Medical, a company that distributes medical devices and equipment to the Tampa Bay area. Panther Medical is a highly successful company. At its helm, Rappaport became a millionaire. For the past couple of decades, he supported benefits across Florida, especially causes related to his Jewish heritage, like the Holocaust Museum. Rappaport fell in love with his heritage when he visited Israel as a teenager. The nation had just established itself a few years before Rappaport traveled there. As a young Jewish teen, the first ever Jewish state was something he took immense pride in. When Rappaport started making money through Panther Medical, he donated to different Israeli charity funds. He gave to the Jewish National Fund and supported projects like playgrounds, the Alexander Muss High School, and a rehabilitation center for disabled children. His daughter Titus inherited his passion for Israel and also donated to Israeli national causes. He took Titus there when she was young, and she fell in love with the country as much as he did. Both Titus and her father make massive donations to these charitable organizations. Titus also sits on the board of directors for the Jewish National Fund. And since her father's disastrous marriage to Halfon, she's been at the forefront of media relations. Almost all of the statements on her father's history with Israel came from her. However, she spent most of her time going after Halfon, and not just legally. Titus has said publicly that she believes Halfon took advantage of her father's advanced age. She took the reins after her father failed to file charges against Halfon, who he wanted to give the benefit of the doubt, despite there being overwhelming evidence indicating she tried to steal from him. Titus quickly stepped in and saw the situation for what it was, a scam, though it took a while for her and the police to convince him that Halfon was scamming him. Rappaport was a man in love. He'd found a beautiful young woman from a country he dedicated his life to supporting. He wasn't about to let her go so easily. In the same legal document, he asked that Halfon not be deported back to her native Israel, even though she represented the nation he loves and a new life adventure. Halfon didn't feel the same way. The evidence of theft was overwhelming, and Rappaport couldn't deny that his beautiful young wife was trying to rob him blind. Halfon's first attempt at stealing from Rappaport took place inside a Tampa Amscot bank branch. 3 months after their August wedding, Halfon walked into the bank building with $1 million Wells Fargo cashier's check. After identifying herself, they invited Halfon to sit down with a bank teller. She explained that these were legitimate checks signed by her husband, who wanted to buy a $1 million yacht with the money. Halfon said Rappaport sent her, his wife, here on his behalf. However, the bank tellers had a protocol. The person whose name was on the check had to be present for them to authorize a cash out. They denied Halfon, and she went home empty-handed. Halfon walked back into the bank a few hours later with 3 new checks. Each one had Rappaport's name on them, along with a $333,000 sum of money. This time, she showed them her Israeli passport and her visa as identification. However, the bank tellers still refused to cash her checks. But before Halfon left, the tellers captured photos of the suspicious woman's passport, her visa, and the 3 checks. Then after Halfon left, the tellers decided to contact the authorities, who started investigating her. Meanwhile, Halfon was back at the drawing board. Her original plan, which was to write her husband's name on $1 million worth of checks, didn't work. She'd have to get more creative. But before she could come up with a better plan, Halfon got a call from Rappaport asking why she tried to cash the checks, followed by an even more important question: where are the checks? Halfon didn't know, but the police looked up Rappaport's contact information and asked him if he'd signed those checks. He, of course, said that was nonsense and didn't know what they were talking about, then called his wife of 4 months. His daughter, Titus, was there in the room with him as Halfon explained herself. though, as Titus recalls, Halfon spent most of the call berating Rappaport for not trusting her enough to handle his money. When he asked for his checks back, she only got angrier. The next day, the police interviewed Rappaport with Titus at his side. That's when he told them he thought Halfon was innocent and that he was giving her the benefit of the doubt. Nevertheless, investigators still found Halfon and interrogated her. They presented the Israeli national with photocopies of her passport, visa, and the checks collected by the bank as evidence. So Halfon told them the truth, her version of the truth. Halfon explained to the investigators that she had to forge the checks. Rappaport's family pressured him to withhold money from her because they thought she was a gold digger. So, to protect herself financially, she tried cashing a few checks. Halfon told police she shipped the checks to her sister in Israel when cashing them didn't work. The police explained that what she did was a crime, and Halfon agreed to ask her sister to send the checks back to Florida. The police decided Halfon's promise was good enough and left. However, it was far from over. Halfon had indeed sent the checks out of Florida, but not to her sister in Israel. In reality, the $333,000 checks were mailed to Orlando. Halfon knew trying to cash the checks herself wouldn't work. She'd have to hire a middleman who knew how to cash forged checks. The mystery person she hired was from Orlando. After Halfon mailed them the checks, they traveled to New Jersey and cashed the first check at a company called Check Pros. Then, 5 days later, they cashed a second check at the same company. However, they never got to cash the third check. Investigators had already been alerted of the first two and ordered Wells Fargo to freeze the third. When the news broke out, no one knew who the mystery person from Orlando was. Since they hadn't technically been charged with a crime, no one was at liberty to release their name, a name that remains a mystery to this day. The authorities gathered more evidence and met with Rappaport in December. Even if Rappaport wasn't willing to give her up, they wanted Halfon. They asked him if he'd heard anything from her lately about the checks. Rappaport told police that Halfon was meeting her sister in Boston to pick up the checks. Halfon told him that she had booked a flight to New York on December 15th, and once she returned to Tampa with the checks, everything would be resolved. The police, however, didn't believe the story. They kept questioning Rappaport, asking him if he believed the story. When the investigators poked him some more, Rappaport finally gave in. He admitted Halfon was probably conning him, a truth his daughter tried to convince him of on their wedding day and every day after. The investigators went looking for Halfon. As they dug, they discovered Halfon actually rescheduled her flight for December 16th, most likely hoping to throw off authorities trying to catch her. On the 16th, police investigators sent a squad down to Tampa Bay International Airport and arrested Halfon just before she got on the plane. They brought her into the station for questioning like normal, though there was one tiny problem. Halfon wasn't American. She was staying in the United States on a visa, but wasn't a citizen. So the police detained Halfon for 13 long months while they further investigated her scam, then offered her a plea deal. Halfon accepted the deal and was deported back to Israel as a condition of the plea agreement. You're probably wondering how Halfon got off so easily. She escaped prison time using one of the most bizarre defenses in court history. She blamed her criminal actions on her psychic. Throughout her time in Tampa, Halfon met with a young psychic named J.C. Wasso. In front of the judge, the court, and Rappaport, Halfon claimed Wasso put a spell on her. This spell, Halfon says, caused her to scam Rappaport, not greed. She says Wasso convinced her that stealing from Rappaport was the only option. Wasso also asked Halfon to give her the money and anything else she stole, including some of Rappaport's jewelry. The Florida state prosecutors recorded Halfon's testimony and went after Wasso. They arrested the self-proclaimed psychic and charged her with several crimes. The prosecutors charged Wasso with 7 different counts of grand theft, several counts of fraud, and 1 count of money laundering. They also compiled and submitted 800 pages of evidence to the court. Her attorney, Glenn Lansky, who's known for defending white-collar criminals, says the state refused to offer his client any plea bargains. He said they were throwing the whole deck at her. Whether or not that was a tarot card pun, we can't know for sure. Still, Florida prosecutors went after Wasso, intending to send her to prison for as long as possible. Since they had already deported Halfon, extraditing her to the U.S. wasn't easy. Lansky believes the prosecutors were scapegoating his client because they lost the actual perpetrator. He says that Halfon committed the crimes and admitted to lying over 50 times during a deposition. Nevertheless, Wasso will appear before a judge in the summer of 2022. She's up against a team of prosecutors on a mission to avenge one of Florida's wealthiest and most generous residents. The psychic's future isn't looking too bright, but She probably saw that coming, right? Click to watch one of these next videos. And let us know in the comments section whether or not you think the psychic was in on it, or was Lin Halfon lying.